Dive in with me as we look at access to information documents that are wilder than a sci-fi movie. They detail COVID limo contracts because while Canadians were locked down and stressed out, our government was rolling out luxury rides to battle the pandemic. Let's dig in. First, let's rewind to early 2021 when Canada's public health czar, Theresa Tam, rolled out beefed up security measures to lock down Canadian travelers in mandatory quarantine jails, while the world was still reeling from the COVID response chaos.
There'll be increased security contractors that would go and do more, I would say, door knocking on to check on people who are in quarantine. So that I think starts almost either today or tomorrow in Toronto, Montreal, broadening out to 35 cities, so that we can have an added layer of assurance that people are observing that quarantine in just in terms of compliance.
We were all too familiar with the grim tales of COVID quarantine hotels, from breeding grounds for COVID infection itself to neglect, meals that were not only overpriced, but made prison fare look like a gourmet feast if you could even get food at all, and even horrific allegations of sexual assault at these facilities.
Upon entry into Canada, her passport was seized and she was forced into a taxi without knowing where she would be taken. She was forced into a federal-run facility under a federal duty of care by the Liberal government, and she was sexually assaulted. This is misogyny and a gross violation of her rights. The Deputy Prime Minister and the Health Minister have implied the victim shouldn't have traveled. Were they suggesting that she deserved what happened to her under their duty of care?
But what slipped under the radar and the staggering waste associated with the COVID hotels was the fleet of luxurious limousines contracted to shuttle these unfortunate souls to their temporary confinement. First stop is page 157 of these ATIP documents. These limo drivers were instructed to call 911 if passengers didn't comply. Yes, the police. Were they transporting rebels or just tired travelers? And check this, back to October 2020, page 166, shows the company chatting with the Public Health Agency of Canada's Donna Malone, who was begging to extend the contract and slash those standby rates, which we'll get into in a minute. They're all chummy, talking about how lucky Nova Scotia was while the world burned. So did the situation really justify and constitute such extreme, aggressive, and unprecedented actions? Likely not. And the proof? Well, that's in the pudding. Look at page 76 of the docs. The activity logs show these limos, or so-called COVID cavalry, were on standby most of the time, perhaps even more than 90%. They were literally getting paid to just stand around. These luxury vehicles were idling, waiting for what exactly? A VIP COVID patient needing to be chauffeured to quarantine? Even if they weren't needed, the taxpayer was footing the bill anyway. Chaotic, wasteful, and oh so fitting for the Liberals. So the government set up these quarantine hotels, and limos were the 24/7 VIP shuttle service. Look at page 62. Drivers had to roll up in sanitized rigs, disposable seat covers, gloves, masks, the whole works. Passengers handled their own luggage, and get this, only 3 people per SUV, with specific seating charts on page 63. Talk about science. They even tossed in one-time use blankets on page 65, invoiced separately. So while the Liberals were busy criminalizing single-use plastics, they were totally okay with single-use blankets to avoid contamination. Talk about hypocrisy. Page 68 to 72, Sanitization Manifesto reads like a hazmat manual. These limos were treated like a petri dish on wheels, Lysol wiping every touchable surface, including key fobs, dousing sanitizer, and avoiding human contact like you're facing the apocalyptic plague. All of this cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. Page 2 breaks down the initial budget of $215,000. Page 4 has it up already to $238,000. And then page 7 shows the total budget which was up to $387,000 for limos that barely drove. So though the company says nobody predicted from the onset that we would be the hostage of COVID-19 for so long, I think it's clear that no one thought they would be the hostage of the Public Health Agency of Canada at the behest of Theresa Tam for so long. And internal communication further shows that PHAC's MAMD, which stands for Material and Asset Management Division, was happily utilizing massive budget increases for this pandemic spending spree. It jumped from $200,000 to a whopping $3 million. That's 1,000% increase thanks just to, well, COVID. So how did they justify this nonsense? Well, page 130 gives us a peek behind the curtain. The intelligent folks in charge were scrambling to explain why they sole sourced this contract, meaning they didn't even bother shopping around for a better deal. They tried to claim urgency, but even they admit it doesn't really hold water. I mean, come on, urgency for limos that sat around mostly doing nothing? Give me a break. Then on page 150, they pull out the big guns, national security. There it is. Limousines were apparently a matter of national security during COVID. I don't know about you, but I feel so much safer knowing a stretch limo was ready to swoop in and save the day. And it just continues to get better or worse, depending on whether you were paying or getting paid in this situation. On page 170, they insisted on having 2 limo vans on call at all times. Someone even had the audacity to basically ask, hey, isn't one enough given the cost? A reasonable question, one would think, but apparently not, because the limo obsession continued. On page 190, the limo company saw a golden opportunity. They offered to cover New Brunswick's border crossings too, but only if they could get an exemption to cross the border, because nothing really screams essential service and health and safety like dodging the very border rules you've been told to call 911 to enforce. And if you thought this couldn't get any more absurd, well, on page 192, it shows they were rushing to finalize this contract in one day because, get this, someone needed a limo tomorrow. Who was this VIP and what was so urgent about them or their situation? Basically, while Canadians were locked down, masked up, and pinching pennies, our government was shelling out hundreds of thousands of dollars for limos to sit on standby, justified by national security and rushed through in a single day. This is what happens when the bureaucracy runs wild and accountability goes out the window. So was this really about health or was it a cash grab? For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. RebelInvestigates.com is our exclusive government accountability website where you can find tons of other investigative reports and chip in to support this kind of work. That's RebelInvestigates.com, and thanks so much for your support.